Wholeness, welcome. This is Josh, Integrating Presence, and today I'm joined by Nate Zeleznick. Nate, how's it going?
Very good, Josh. I'm excited to be here on this nice Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, man. Hey, who is Nate and what does he do?
Well, I am originally from northern Utah. Well, actually, originally from outer space. Anybody who knows me will tell you that. But I was born here in northern Utah, and I call this home. I travel all over the world, but I always come back here to the Wasatch Front region because it's just such a beautiful place. Love the people, love the environment, and my family's here. So, yes, I was born and raised here for the past 48 years, and I have been on a mission for the past 25 years carrying and stewarding a very special lineage of meditation, breathwork, energy development, energy healing, and also extrasensory development that comes out of a very sacred royal martial art out of the Far East in central Java, Indonesia. And I'm one of only two American master and trainers that are allowed to teach this in this country, or actually North or South America. And so that's a brief overview of who I am, what I do. My mission is to help at least 100 million people. I don't want to raise anybody's consciousness. That's not my job, but I would love to help them do that for themselves. And to that effect, I am so blessed that I am able to steward this method. And it is a method that works for anyone with a body. So it's not belief-based, it's not religious, it's not something where you have to have grown up in a certain culture or imbibe or take in any special things. It's based upon our breath, it's based upon our mental abilities, it's based upon our exercise, and it's based upon our intention to create change in our body, our mind, our spirit. And so it's worked very, very well for hundreds of thousands of people. And so I'm here and I'm blessed to be able to share this with your audience.
Well, great, Nick. Let's start digging into this. Nick, I called you Nick. Wow, I have such maybe I need some training with people's names. Let's get. I mean, this. I'll just start off here. I was reading the story around this, and I this audience is familiar with the woo, some of the stuff, and I mean, I don't want to. I tell people this stuff is the woo stuff. It's not the main thing because it can be distracted from what we should be doing here, I think, for the most part. However, it is really inspiring, and in this day and age, there's plenty of charlatans out there, and a lot of people interested in this. And how do we view this, and what is your take on it? Kind of from the more grounded, you can go as far out as you want, from going to the more practical to how we should be, or how much should we be aspiring to use this to help overcome our limitations to what most people perceive as possible, and then how should we be inspired by this, or get inspiration for this. And I know I throw a lot of stuff out here, but I want to know about your lineage a little bit too. If you want to just go into however you feel is helpful with that, and is there degrees of initiation, like secrets and this type of thing. I think that's enough to get started. I'll just leave it to your guidance to just start talking about this in however way you feel is helpful.
Okay, wow. Well, those are a lot of subjects, Josh. So why don't I go for, first of all, lineage. So first of all, my personal family lineage. So my grandmother on my father's side, her last name was Luri, which in the Jewish tradition, anybody who hears the name Luria will understand right away, if they know anything about the Kabbalah, that the creator of the Kabbalah was Isaac ben Luria Ashkenazi. And he is one of the most famous rabbis of all time. And he is the one who helped develop the modern Kabbalah. So I am a direct descendant of the creator of the Kabbalah. So it is in my genes to be into the woo, into the mystical, into the, I would say the hypernormal, not the paranormal, because it's the normal, but it's beyond the scope of what most people actually perceive or actually really want to step into. So right there, it's in my blood to want to A, help people, B, be a teacher, and C, be into the mystical arts. So genetically and energetically, I'm already predisposed to that. The lineage of the art that I teach. So first of all, it is called, and everybody get ready for this, Marpati Puti. Marpati Puti. Now, that means white dove in the Indonesian language, and this comes out of Central Java. And this was a guarded secret within the royal family of Central Java for about 450 years, from the king to their heir. And it is an amazing, comprehensive, holistic wellness practice, but it was developed actually for war. It was developed to increase the chi in our body, to have fighting skills that were incomparable to the other people. And when I say fighting skills, it's Indonesia. They have more ways of kicking each other's ass than any place I've ever seen. They have over 700 different recognized styles of martial art in the Indonesian archipelago. So this was, it's very important that the king had to have the best martial art, because they didn't do like the European kings. They didn't lead from the back. They were kind of like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. They're charging, or William Wallace in Braveheart. They're charging at the front. So they had to be the best fighters, or else you kill the king, you take the kingdom, right? So they developed this over centuries. Well, obviously not the first generation, but this very specific, precise method for creating more electricity in the body, creating perfect health, being able to increase stamina, increase our immune function, to be able to then perceive beyond the physical limits, which there are no physical limits, but beyond what we think of as limits. And so all of this was done until 1963, when they released it to the Indonesian public. Now, for people familiar with history, in the 1960s, there was something happening in Indonesia called the Indonesian genocide, where over 500,000 Indonesian people were killed by their government in a 6-month period. There's actually a movie called The Year of Living Dangerously with Mel Gibson that is about this. And the 10th generation royal family heir and 2 of his sons, the 11th generation heirs, which I personally learned and trained with, they decided to release this to Indonesian people to help them, first of all, be able to defend themselves better. Second thing is to be able to help foster and bring in this understanding, this deep understanding and knowing that we're all one, that we're all energetically linked. There's no greater, there's no lesser. And when I hurt you, I hurt myself. So this oneness, this connection, this national pride was a very important thing for them. But they had never allowed a non-Indonesian person to learn that until me. So how that came around, and I'll keep this brief because people can go onto my website and read the bio. I've got it all over the place. But I had a synchrodestiny happen to me where I grew up in Utah, but I'm not of the predominant religion here. And I grew up in a very small town, a farm town, a cowboy town. Not town, little teeny weeny speck. We'll call it a speck. And I was significantly bullied every single day, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I didn't really have any place safe to go. So at 11, I became suicidal. Every single day I wanted to die. At 12, around 12, I started having spontaneous out-of-body experiences where I would astral project out of my body. And it was like my higher self was telling me, Nate, it's okay. None of this is real. It's not permanent. You're more than your physical body. We're going to show you, or I'm going to show you. Hang on. It gets better. And I did. Now, growing up, I always wanted to be a ninja and a Jedi. But I only had a couple people to practice martial arts on, and those were my brothers. They didn't appreciate that. I feel bad about that to this day. But when I finally got a chance to get a driver's license and start studying out-of-body experiences, and the very first thing I ever bought with my own money was a book called Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. For people out there familiar with the Monroe Institute, they've trained numerous CIA spies how to do remote viewing and out-of-body projections to spy on the Soviets during the Cold War. So I've always gravitated toward the things that have some evidence, that have some backing behind it, things that I can then do and know and feel and understand, rather than being belief-based, because belief is a poor substitute for knowledge. It really is. Well, when I was starting my martial arts training around the age of 16, 17, well, it was a strip mall martial art. I took numerous martial arts in college. None of them had the internal component. They didn't have meditation. They didn't have energy work. They didn't teach you anything about chi. It was kicking, punching, fighting. It was typically what you think of traditional martial arts. So taekwondo, karate, kempo karate, ninjutsu, kendo. So when I saw an advertisement in Black Belt magazine when I was 23 that guaranteed me inner power in 2 weeks, I was like, okay. And it was a totally bullshit method. I mean, I'll just straight right up. What can you get for $40 that's going to actually do that and do it in 2 weeks? Nothing. I'm just going to tell that for everybody out there. Nothing. But I was intrigued, and it came with a VHS tape. So the method that it sent with this little teeny chintzy manual was completely useless. But what was in that VHS tape showed people from Indonesia doing martial arts. And I have to say, Josh, I was blown away. I have never seen anything like that in my life. And it showed people who were breaking not boards and bricks. They were breaking stacks of stone and steel and 20 feet of bricks. I mean, it was nuts. And that was cool and all. But when I saw people doing something truly superhuman, which was seeing without their eyes, they were blindfolded or blind, and they were driving cars through traffic. They were fighting full contact, bare knuckles with hoods over their heads cinched. They had military people who could shoot targets out of people's hands and ride motorcycles in between military, like a bunch of military people, and they're just riding their motorcycles in between them. And then it showed blind people who could see, and they could, I mean, their eyes were white as a sheet, and they could read printed material. I, first of all, was really skeptical. I was like, bull, that can't be real. I mean, that would be awesome if Jedis were real. But I've been having these out-of-body experiences, and I know those are real. Those have been studied. Government has paid for people to do them. So maybe it's something, maybe there's something to this. I wish I could learn. And then the next day, my whole life changed. I watched a blind woman almost get killed in front of me, trying to cross the street. And I knew while I was sitting at that intersection in my car, when her dog let her face first into the light pole. And I can only tell you, it was what I can explain as a spiritual imperative. I had to find those people on that video to help her. I'd never met a blind person before. I don't know why that happened. My higher self was calling me, though. And so for anybody out there who has ever felt a sense of knowing that you had to follow this path, I hope you did. I hope you did. This was so loud, I couldn't not. And so I went on a search for those Indonesian people, and I found them. When I found them, I contacted them and asked them, is this really real? And they're like, yes, we've trained over 3,000 blind people so far over here. And this has been used by the Indonesian military for decades, including our most secretive special forces soldiers. They're Kopassus soldiers. Some of them, there's a special division, kind of like Navy SEAL Team 6. Well, they use this in order to do this. But then I found out the breathwork method, which is unlike anything else in the world. Can't compare it. It's like apples to an iPhone. Like there's an Apple iPhone, right? But I'm talking an apple, piece of fruit, and then there's an iPhone. And the difference in the complexity is, wow, it is like that if comparing this to any other breathwork. So they use it, that breathwork alone, in every branch of the Indonesian military because of how quickly it improves people's stamina, their endurance, their vitality, their recovery ability, their immune function. It will increase their ability to calm down during stressful situations, which obviously in the military, that's a very, very valuable skill. Then also the meditative abilities to help prevent PTSD. There are so many benefits to this that the Indonesian government has used this in SWAT teams, in every branch of the military, many private security forces. The Presidential Secret Service uses this. I mean, this is the real deal. But the thing is, though, Josh, no, but they'd never trained anybody outside Indonesia. So I'm like, okay, that's nice and all, but I just want to help blind people. So I sponsored the very first demonstration of this outside Indonesia in 1999. So the fall of 1999, I brought a team over here, and I got to see for myself, pun intended, I got to see blind people who could see, and they could do anything you and I can do with our eyesight and more. Well, when this team, after I hosted different demonstrations around the country, they were going to leave. You know, this is back in the day where you could actually escort people to the jetway. And, you know, I had met an Indonesian guy that when they first got off the plane, he said, "Hey, my name's Heru. I'm good friends with one of the 11th generation heirs, and I'm going to hang out with you guys for the next couple of weeks." And I'm like, "Great, good to meet you." Well, it turns out this guy used to be a former Special Forces trainer for Marpati Puti. This guy just happened to live in Salt Lake City. And when the chairman of Marpati Puti looked at me before they left, and he said, "Nate, Heru's going to be your trainer." And I went, "Wait a minute, what?" You want to talk about a heart racing, heart dropping? I think my heart fell out my butthole, honestly. Because, I mean, this is, you want to be a Jedi until you actually get the chance to be around a Jedi master. And then you're like, am I worthy? Can I really do this? Is this what I want to do? I've wanted to do this my entire life. And then you get that opportunity. I had every excuse in the book not to do it. And the thing is that my soul would not allow me to say no. And so I said, "Yes, sir." And I started training with that gentleman, who's a ear, nose, throat surgeon in Indonesia, a speech language pathologist here. And he didn't like me very much. He didn't want me to be able to train because I'm American. He wanted to keep it in Indonesian only. But the 11th generation heir who asked him was one of his best friends. He's like, "Please, he's the one. He's the one who needs to learn this. And I want you to train him. There's nobody better that could train him than you, Haru." And I was like, "Okay. But if he quits, it's not my fault." So I started training. And then a few weeks later, one of my younger brothers joined me. And together, the two of us, we went through the ranks in half the time up to a certain point. We trained basically with the Indonesian Special Forces training. When Y2K happened and everybody was so worried about all the computers resetting and the world's going to collapse, my brother and I were running 5 miles barefoot in December 31st here in Utah on asphalt as part of our test to become Marpati Puti members. And on December 31st, well, actually, I'll just call it, because the initiation then went later, New Year's Day, at the start of this millennia, we became the first ever official lifetime Marpati Puti members outside Indonesia. So huge honor, huge, I mean, there's no way to really describe it. You know, it's kind of like Columbus setting foot in Cuba. He didn't actually come to America. Just a fun fact for information, but discovering something brand new or being the first to ever do this and pioneering this. And so for the next 20 years, we made numerous trips to Indonesia for testing and training and teaching people over there as well. And owned one of the largest martial arts and meditation academies in the country. And then COVID. And we all know what happened during that. Over 7,000 martial arts schools closed in the country within the first 3 months, and they closed permanently. Well, we made it about 9 months into the pandemic, and we just weren't able to continue on. And so we had to pivot very quickly to teaching things in a seminar format where people would fly in from all over the country who were willing to travel, the brave people who would get on a plane with like 8 other people to get here to Utah. And then we would train them in the seeing without eyes discipline. And what we found was that, you know, over those 20 years, we had proven to medicine and science that we can see without not everyone. Some people who are gifted and are willing to put in hours a day for years and are gifted. Some people are able to see with their mind and not with their eyes. It's not for everybody, but everybody does have intrinsic abilities. And that's one thing that I love about Marpati Puti in this work, is that it's a method that helps unlock whatever your higher abilities are. So it's like the X-Men. I don't know if you're going to be heal quick or if you're going to be able to fly or start fires with your hands. Who knows? Until you actually do it. And that's one thing that I'll just put this out there for all the viewers, right, and the listeners right now. Really, I mean, it's got to be real talk, because we live in a world of illusion where we are always distracted by the next shiny thing. We have the 7-second attention span. We are living longer, but we're not living healthier, and we are being poisoned constantly in our food, our water, our air, in our own mind, by our politics, by everything that we see on social media coming in here, our own opinions, and we know that we can make ourselves sick from stress. The CDC says it on their website that over 90% of diseases are all caused by stress. So with that in mind, Josh, if we can make ourselves sick, we can also make ourselves healthy. But it's an important thing. I'm going to ask a really important question. This might be controversial, and I don't care, because people need to do this. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You get stronger, healthier, and live longer. Oh, bummer. How healthy are you? Like, no bullshit. How healthy are you? If you could increase your stamina, if you could increase your lung capacity, if you can increase your immune function by 5%, if you could live 2 weeks longer than your clock is ticking down now, how much would that be worth it to you? Would it be worth 10 minutes a day to focus on yourself and do some specific breath work that will electrify your system? Most people say yes, and then they go back to sleep. And they just go unconscious again, and they go back to eating the fast food. They go back to being very self-centered, judgmental. The thing is that so many people there's this big spiritual revolution happening right now, but so much of it is absolute bullshit, because it's by people who are not of a consciousness level that they can actually lead anybody else there. They read some books, they maybe did some plant medicine, and now they're trying to be gurus. And I think that's a really scary thing, especially for the people that follow them. So I'm actually going to be producing a new series of videos. It'll be out for public on social media, called Wolf in Saints Clothing. Because there are, unfortunately, a lot of, as you mentioned, charlatans and people who have not done the work, or maybe they have done the work, but their countenance or their personality is one of a sexual predator. And I know several facilitators that have taken advantage of people while they're under plant medicine. And I'm just like, don't ever come around me.
It's a huge issue in spiritual communities in general. You always hear if scandal, it's usually sexually related. It's not, that's the one that takes the most. Well, Nate, this has all been, I'm kind of blown away at all the stuff here. And you haven't really even gone into some of the details of your story. You did a lot, but there's still plenty more. And I just want to overemphasize here how the good part of this. Okay, I don't think there's any question that a lot of this can be used for betterment, for service, for training, for wellness, and I want to make that up front. So when I try to push your feet a little closer to the fire here, I want any of that stuff. I want to be overlit by that this is for good. So if you allow me to ask a little bit more, maybe challenging questions here, in some of these occult practices, they balance the dark with the light, right? Some of the more darker actions will then have to be balanced out with more benevolent actions, from what I understand. And so I'm not accusing anything, but I just, this is kind of a background maybe of kind of a line of inquiry here. But I want to go into picking your mind a little bit about war in general. For me, I'm totally on board with the Second Amendment, even though I'm in a place where I wouldn't even really have to defend myself. Kind of, I don't know karate, but I know crazy, right? So, but I, of course, who am I to say someone that they can't defend themselves? That's ridiculous, but I don't feel we ever really have much of a right to initiate force, but of course, if someone initiates force, and that's what martial arts, I mean, I don't have any understanding whatsoever really of martial arts. And so I'm kind of probably, culturally ignorant too, as the how it's just a little bit of how it's way more interwoven into some Asian cultures than the West, where it's kind of quite a foreign thing. I'm not saying it's inauthentic here by any means, but it's not something a lot of people grow up with as a kind of a cultural background. But this notion of war, though, and the times that we're in, the hour we're in, especially, I wanted to see, what do you think is the root of why people get into wars too. I mean, the obvious one is kind of like water rights. I think through history, access to resources and things like this, a notion of scarcity, of course, revenge, ill will is a huge one, greed, and then just ignorance. These are the roots, this delusional state, not in a psychological sense, but just not really being aware that we're greedy or have ill will. And then, this other thing about conceit. There's these different flavors of conceit. The one we're most familiar with is I'm better than this guy. And then the other one, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't live up. I'll never live up to this. I'll never get as good as this. But then there's this more subtle conceit of comparison, right? Of like, oh, I'm just as good as this guy. And so with all this, I think the most thing here is, I follow some of the Buddhist path and do some of these practices. I wouldn't consider myself Buddhist, but even with all his amazing psychic powers that is said in the suttas, and I know some people would say this is crazy, this with scientists, but let's just go with it even on the story level. He couldn't even stop war. So one of the explanations I've heard from this is some people's actions in the past have just bore fruit now, and it's got to play out some way because of past actions. Now, I don't know. That's just a theory for me because my level of discerning action and reaction, karma and the fruit of karma, is not on par with where I can be making definitive statements on this. But I want to get your take on this because, I have no disrespect to military men and women so far as just the regular Joe. A lot of times they get roped into things either by force. They're brainwashed. There's so much brainwashing and manipulation in the United States. That someone that they don't know has sent them overseas to fight for reasons they have no idea, when a lot of times the bankers fund both sides and get rich. So, yeah, on a deeper existential level, what do you think is the root of war? Or is there anything that can really be done about it besides like yourself, you're saying an honorable defending. But what kind of wisdom do you have to share on all this?
Well, like Gandhi said, be the change that you wish to see. It has to start with each and every single one of us. And that's what my mission is, to help. Honestly, Josh, I've heard it said, I'm here to wake up other lions. That's great. I'm here to wake up dragons because they're powerful, they're mystical, they're eternal, they're wise. I mean, in the lore, right? They take no shit. And it depends on which ones, obviously, you're looking at. But, in the Orient, the dragons are looked at as mythical but wise beings of knowledge. Well, the thing is that everybody has that lion or that dragon inside of them, but we're not all here to have that experience. Our soul, we come in to have these experiences. So I'm going to, I'm going to give you my 50,000 light year view on this, that we're all the infinite, unlimited, eternal being. We are the same being having different experiences through different lenses, which is our body. That's it. We are all things. So there's a beautiful book by James Twyman that talks about it's called the Moses Code, that when Moses asked God on Mount Sinai, who are you? And he said, I am that I am, right? We've all heard that, but something they left out because of maybe the Aramaic translation is a comma. I am that, comma, I am. So every single thing that there is, we are actually that, because we are made of this energy. And, in physics, if you go down far enough into the subatomic particles, what physicists have found is that there is no matter. Even Einstein said that. Tesla talked about energy and frequency. If you want to understand the universe, think about, and I'm paraphrasing, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, right? So the thing about this is, when you go to subatomic particles, what they're finding is these subatomic particles are phasing in and out of reality about 1 septillionth of a second. So in actuality, we are phasing out of this reality into another reality, a septillion times a second, which we can't, obviously be aware of that quickly. With all of that said, Josh, I think that I really feel that the reason why we have war is because I don't think there are any. I would not point fingers and blame any dark forces or any extraterrestrial forces, because if you come from that position that all is one, that means, let's say there were Arcturians or Pleiadians or Greys who does, stick things up your butt. They're us too, and we are all those things. We're every atom in the entire universe experiencing itself through as a probe of consciousness. So we're instruments of consciousness and sending information back. Now, I say this from a position of knowing, where in 2007 I died and I came back to life during one of my tests in Indonesia. The tests are that brutal. I was actually carbon monoxide poisoning, and I stood up. I was standing up at the end of my movement test, and I watched my body drop, and I was still standing up. And I'd had numerous astral projections, been studying this field since I was 16 years old. And then I watched my body being dragged off by my trainer and my brother, and I decided to come back into my body. But while I was in that state, I had this very powerful understanding that we're everything. And do I want to come back and continue this? Do I want to do this a little bit longer and have these experiences? And you can see what I chose, but I didn't have to. And we all have that ability. We all have that. We can stay in this life or we cannot. But here's an interesting thing. In Hinduism, there's a saying that if a fly is flying and you kill the fly keeps flying. It doesn't know it died. It's just consciousness. Oh, it just kept on going. Well, I can tell everybody this from my personal knowing, but of course, go find out for yourself, hopefully not through near death, but through meditation, out-of-body travel, remote viewing. There are things to help you do that we're a lot more than our physical body. So with that in mind, since we are infinite, unlimited, eternal being having experience, if you can imagine it this way, a mentor of mine named Brian Ridgway, very famous author now, he put it this way. Let's say that you were this infinite being and you're just living in bliss all the time for eternity. And then you say, I want to mix things up. I'm going to create this Earth life system, or I'm going to create this universe. And I want to experience all these things. And everything's perfect and it's idyllic. And it's just 72 degrees, sunny, and orgasms all day. It's just beautiful for 90 years. You do that a couple times, you're probably going to get a little bit bored and you're going to want to mix it up. So as an infinite being that is here to have experience, what better way to do that than to create duality, to create opposing forces, to create the otherness, so that we can come in here and make our way back to understanding oneness. It's not easy. You cannot, there's no ayahuasca that you can take. There's no book you can read. There's no tape you can listen to. The only way you can get back to oneness is through the path of surrender. And that is not giving up. That's something that I had to learn the hard way for a long time. Surrender doesn't mean throwing in the towel and giving up. It means releasing your attachment to outcome and result and expectation. Now, Buddha said that, many people think that Buddha said the root of suffering is attachment. No, that's not what he said. That's not the translation. The root of suffering is craving.
Yeah. Tanha.
That's an unhealthy attachment, craving. So, when it comes down to war, my personal opinion is that on the highest level, and this really sucks for the people, that are the beings that are having this experience of being blown up in Gaza right now, that we have our goal line and we have our soul line. Our soul line is so far beyond what we can conceptualize as a small human individual having this experience, that having that trust, that faith in our own soul, in ourself, in God, in our beingness with the all that we are, that we are having this experience for a reason. But here's an interesting thing. For me, anytime I'm having a situation that I don't prefer, put it that way, contrast, I do my best to remind myself to ask a very important question. How is this for me? How is this for me? If it's somebody that I'm having contrast with, this whole thing that we get there, I like to ask the question, how is this me? How do I do this exact same thing? How are they a reflection of the internal environment of myself? Because it always is 100% of the time, whether it is Hitler or it's Gandhi, Mother Teresa or Stalin. There's always these parts inside of us, this dark, this light. And, a good friend of mine, and I think this is a really powerful piece of wisdom for a lot of people out there, because many people have heard the story of the wolves inside, the white wolf and the dark wolf. If you haven't, a very brief story. So, tribal elder in Native American tradition is sitting with his grandson, and he's talking about the two wolves inside all of us. We've got the light wolf, we've got the dark wolf. And he says to his grandson, or his grandson asks him, "So, Grandpa, which one wins?" And he says, "The one that you feed." Now, another very wise mentor of mine, they pointed out that's not true. The one that wins is the one that you starve, and the one you ignore, because that's the voracious one that comes and bites you in the ass and cannibalizes you. Because you don't step into that shadow, or you don't step into even the people who are in the shadow and they're the darkest pits of despair, not willing to step into their light and go, wow, I am amazing. I have 37 or to 50 trillion cells in my body. They're all doing about 6 trillion functions a second. How amazing am I? This is incredible. Instead of just wallowing in the mire of their desperation and their despair. So to have that and be able to recognize, no matter which side of that pendulum you are, to create that complete cohesive whole. You've got the yin and yang, they're always together, right? And there's a little bit of yang in the yin. There's a little bit of yin in the yang. They don't get together, right? But they can interact with one another, or they can be a cohesive, coherent whole. So if that makes sense, that on the levels of consciousness, and anybody out there who's a fan of Dr. David Hawkins and his Power versus Force levels of consciousness, that the majority of the world still operates underneath the level of 200, which is in the levels of force, instead of above 200, which is the levels of power. There are 6 people on the planet at level 600 or above, which is the level of complete peace and enlightenment. There's only 6, but they help balance out the levels of consciousness for the other 7.5 billion of us. And so the thing is that we are in this age of information, and it's been said that in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. So with this in mind, we're getting better, Josh. We are getting better. And as far as all of the political stuff, I tend to stay out of that just because I like to be happy. B, I really like honesty. Honesty, integrity, and harmony is very important in my life. It's too short. We're going to blink and be dead. Flat out. Blink and you're dead.
Same.
So,
Politics is an emotional con game, if you ask me,
absolutely.
So to your points here, the reason I got I turned off for the extremes of nihilism and eternalism. Nihilism, that's it's just not helpful. Things don't work that way. Like you say, just because you swat a fly, that doesn't mean it's completely wiped out forever and ever, right? That's kind of extreme, that the world would be better if everything was obliterated. I don't think we're anywhere close to the nihilistic point of view. Maybe in warfare or something, you might tend towards that or something. But the eternalist view, though, what if I want to get out of that, though? I can't. There's no escape. To me, that's another prison, because as beautiful it is as much power as it affords. If I want to get out of that, or I can't. So so these are. I'm not saying. Well, I'll just leave it that for now. And but the one I want to get to here that you really speak to is power. Okay, and the light and the dark. What I've found is the shadow self. That the reason it keeps wanting to raise its ugly head a lot, and so many of us, is because it wants its power respected. The dark is a very powerful force. Doesn't mean we have to act on it, buy into it, but its power needs to be respected as an equal expression of consciousness. When I learned that and put that into practice, all these kind of dark, not all of them, but a lot of these dark tendencies that kept coming up again and again that I tried to push down, it was because they wanted to be seen and respected and honored. And I found that so very helpful of a teaching and putting that into my place. So and I like the notion you started off here too about like true empowerment that's helpful, especially for the masculine here. That, like you said, you people are bullied, and if you just want to give us a little wisdom on victimizer too, this is a huge program that I feel victimized. So then I want then I feel entitled to go in and victimize someone else, right? Because they did this to me. So, and we see it playing out over and over and over in our society too, but mostly in our own personal lives. We all know who's been victimized and who the victimizer is. A vicious cycle that's it's self-responsibility to change this, because as we know, ill will can never overcome ill will. Only non-ill will can overcome ill will. This is an ancient and eternal law. So yes, if you want to speak a little bit to the victimizer, or we can just say bully, victim, like archetype and mentality programs that are running so rampant in our society today.
And this is a wonderful thing, because the thing is, as I mentioned, I was bullied heavily. And I also mentioned that I practiced martial arts on my brother as a bully. So I would get bullied at school and take it out on them. And these are learned behaviors. Because if you look at, say, Native American societies or the Aboriginal societies, many of the South American tribes, as well as many others, of course, there is none. Everybody is part of the whole. They're part of the community. Everybody's family. You will be born and die around these same people. And there's none of the maybe there's some games like, oh, I shot a monkey or a kangaroo better than you did. Okay, but not this war. Not nearly as much. Now, of course, there were warring tribes in the Aboriginal cultures, many in the Native American cultures, many in South America, and all over the place, right? Because there still is that, where we have that limit brain, we have the wanting to survive. And if you look at animals, you just look at animals, especially herd animals. So I'll use an elk. Here, North America, elk, right? You got the herd bull, and he's got the harem of his cows, and he gets to impregnate all the cows. He also helps to protect them from predators. If he's got these big antlers to be able to do this, but then also other bulls come over and they fight, and this is because everybody wants those mating rights. And we still have people that are so unconscious to their own physiology that they allow this to do this. Now, on a large, that they take over. You just see the peacocking of influencers all over the place. I mean, men have been doing this, especially men. Women have their own kind of battles amongst themselves, right? But for men wanting to have the biggest, and be able to have the most money, fastest car, biggest house, attract the women, because the women want the stability, they want the safety, they want the person who's going to provide for them, they want the strongest, right? This is hardwired into our DNA. So we understand this. When it comes down to war, you're just looking at it on a larger scale. You have the people who have that want even more. They don't just want, they want a bigger herd. That's why they want to take over countries. They want the resources. They want to, they want to be the man or the woman. They want to be able to accumulate more. And 99 out of 100 times, I'm sure, this is because of a lack of something inside themselves that says they are not enough, so therefore they must amass more, and it's never enough. And that's really a sad thing, if you think about it this way. But this amazing dance that we're all doing with each other, thinking that there is anything else besides ourselves being everything else. But as we do this, I just keep looking at it. How is this for me? How is this for me? How did I create this? What am I here to learn from this lesson? Okay, great. And sometimes that's an important thing that I hope everybody can take away from this podcast, if nothing else. Ask that question and then shut up. Don't answer it. Ask and listen. Meditation, well, prayer is asking God or the all or your higher self for something. Meditation is listening for the answer. When you start answering, oh, I know, that's why. No, you don't. That's, once again, your egoic brain taking over, wanting to be right. When it comes down to real answers, righteousness has nothing to do with it. perception and awareness has to do with it. And the only way, just like we cannot talk and listen at the same time, it's not possible. One's an outflow, one's an inflow. You have to let your mind calm down. And that's one thing why with my Integrated Ascension Method, that's my company, where I take Marpati Puti and get all these different technologies from the 21st century. And I'm the only one in the world doing this. But it's because I like to go farther, faster, and I like to help people get better results. And in today's day and age where we have so many different distractions that are pulling our attention in different ways and so many judgments, we're always judging ourselves. With all these things going on, having a tried and true method that can take people into heart-brain coherence, drop their brain waves, get them into presence within 2 to 3 minutes, reliably without having any external source other than a specific technique to help you do this, that is invaluable for people to have a healthier, longer, happier life. And that's really what I'm here to do, is help people know how they can do that. So with that in mind, the reason why I really feel that we still have these things going on is because we still have so many people below that level of 200 down in the level of force, and not enough people rising into power yet. But the consciousness of the humankind has gone up significantly since even 30 years ago. So it is on an upward slope, and this is a good thing. My personal hope, and I'm sure many people out there share this as well, is I hope that we evolve in our consciousness fast enough to mitigate and reverse the damage that we're doing to our planet. And anybody, once again, I'll be controversial again, and that's okay. I don't care. I'm here to stimulate thought. Anybody who says climate change isn't real, oh, humans aren't doing that, I'm like, okay, well, maybe not. How big was the Pacific garbage patch 30 years ago? It wasn't there, people. How about the Atlantic one? How about here in Utah on the Wasatch Front, when we get what we call the inversion here, and the air quality is so bad that you walk out and they say it's the same damage to your lungs as smoking 14 cigarettes a day. For every man, woman, child's pet, every animal gets to breathe that in. Tell me that was that way. It wasn't that way 30, 40 years ago. When I was growing up here, we never had that. And now sometimes it's so toxic that they say, use a respirator. Do not go outside. Tell me that was the way it was before, and I'm going to tell you you're full of shit. It wasn't. And humans are doing this stuff on the planet as we burn more things. We're poisoning our planet. And whether we're affecting the climate or not, okay. That's up for debate. Some people say yes, some people say no, but no one can deny that the water quality report that came out last week that shows that every bottle of water contains millions of pieces of nanoplastics that then go into your body, that it's being linked now to reproductive harm. That's why birth rates are going down. I mean, come on, don't be stupid, people.
Yeah, whether the climate's all that stuff is not as important as, do you care or not? Do we care about ourselves and others? Do we care enough to do our part to not shit all over the earth and people out there? I mean, yes, that's what I tell people. If we want to have an immediate effect, why not go out and pick up garbage? And or put the trash cans up. This is something we can see. The microplastics. These are things. Now, climate models, all that stuff. To me that it gets into politics and triggering pieces of emotion. What it boils down to is, do we care or don't we? And are we going to do something practical about it and kindly about it, instead of just using it as another platform for righteousness? Put our money where our mouth is. And I don't really have any other good solutions instead of take care and take care of yourself, and be open to helping myself and others, and being kind to each other. So, Nate, this has been amazing. I really appreciate your expertise. And the stories you highlighted, the service work you're doing, the empowerment paths, the health and wellness things, especially for, the masculine in particular, which is, I mean, that's a whole other thing. We need more masculine role models, to show what I guess you use the divine masculine here. These role models, and are just some wisdom and teaching around this. I really appreciate what you're doing, your work, how you're helping people and yourself, and teaching and training. So tell people about how they can get in touch with you, how they can find you, courses and training you have going on, if you have books, products, events, anything you want to draw people's attention to. And then what message would you like to take everybody out on?
Beautiful. Well, with what I do, it's so unique. And I'll be honest, anybody that has a body really needs this. It really is for anybody that has a body. If you don't have a body, I really can't help you. But if you have lungs, if you have an immune system, if you like to do more in your life, you want to live a longer life, you want to feel better and have a longer fun span, not just a lifespan, go to my website. My website is, I think this is just a sexy website because I don't know how I got it. It was just available. I think GoDaddy was holding it for me. My website is iampure.energy. Because yes, you are. I am pure.energy. Now, if you go there, I have a couple different online courses where people around the world can do. First of all, I've got a free course that teaches energy shielding, but then also the perfect breath rhythm that will move you into parasympathetic dominance and quiet calm within just a couple minutes. It's amazing, and increase your lung capacity. That's a free course right there on my website. But then I have my masterclass, and I also have my LEAP program. Now, my masterclass, that teaches people how to achieve pain-free mobility, how to use their mind to block pain, how to have more endurance, more stamina, flexibility in their body, but then also how to start to feel, flow, and project their own internal energy. Because we're just electrical machines. That's why if your heart stops, they don't stick needles in you. They shock you back to life because we're made of electricity. And so that's my masterclass. And that's for people who are just starting to get into, say, breath work, consciousness work, meditation. But for people who have already been doing the work, I have a supercharger unlike any other that you will ever find. And that's my LEAP program. And this comes directly from the Marpati Puti system of hard style breath locking, holding, hypoxic work that actually increases the electrical capacity and the electrical output of every cell in our body, as well as starting to unlock these higher abilities reliably. And that is available on my website as well. And that's the Life Force Energy Ascension Protocol, or LEAP. I also have two very cool programs coming out that I'm happy about. This is going to really change a lot of people's lives. And these are my sexual wellness programs. My first one is Eros, that's for the men, and the other one is Venus for the women. We have, if you think about the Viagra market, that's $4.7 billion a year for ED. That's a lot of people who are having issues with that, and that's just the men. Women have about 14% higher sexual dysfunction than men do. And there are things that you can do with your breath, with your mind, with your energy that can help you in amazing ways. I've had people that haven't had feeling in that area in over 2 years. And in about 1.5 minutes, they were, we'll just say things were moving. In a minute and a half, after 2 years of injections, pills, creams, pumps, all the stuff, didn't do anything. And these are elderly people. So the thing is that everybody wants to have a better time when it comes to that. And this will help people do that. It's incredible. The Marpati Puti system is so expansive. I love the fact that I can take a certain chapter from each one and start to really release this to the world. So yeah, a masterclass, LEAP, and then the Eros, and then the Venus programs. You can reach out to me if you're interested in those ones. And when people go to any of my courses, if they use this integrating presence coupon code, so just type in when it says coupon code integrating presence, you'll get 10% off any of my courses. And then for the people who want to bring this to their boardroom, I teach a lot of corporations and CEOs. If they are athletes, professional or amateur, if you want everything in your athletic game to go up, everything. There's a reason this has been used by military forces for decades, because it creates very quick change. I also have a program for that. Okay, so I've got these different things available. and one-on-one elite coaching for people who really want to get the entire package. And I bring in all biohacking, bioacoustic technology, EEG brainwave training sets. I bring in tech that it's just, we nerd out, but then you get to actually see results graphed out from the time that we're together until, and you can actually see this for yourself right there. It's a beautiful system. So integrating presence is going to be your gateway into that. Use that coupon code, everybody. And I wish you the most amazing now and day on purpose. That is the thing that I'll leave you with, is that you are the creator. Be intentional about it. Wake up. You're a dragon. You just need to remember that. And that's really what all this is just a state of remembering the infinite being that we are. We just went to sleep to come here to have this experience. It's time to wake up and do it on purpose.
Well, cool, Nate. Thanks again for joining and sharing with the audience. And may all beings everywhere find their most and train for their most optimal benefit for themselves and for each other, especially in the long term. Bye now.